اسلامی دن منایا جائے گا۔ ہر سال خواتین کے فروغ کے لیے یوم خواتین کے موقع پر ایک تھیم کا انتخاب کیا جاتا ہے۔ اس سال کا تھیم ہے کہ ایک پائیدار کل کے لیے آج صنفی مساوات ضروری ہے۔ دنیا بھر میں خواتین کو بااختیار بنانے اور صنفی مساوات کے لیے کوشش جاری ہے۔ یہ ایک دن خاص عورتوں کے لیے مقرر کیا جاتا ہے جو خود اس بات کا ثبوت ہے کہ معاشرے میں عورتوں کو برابری کا درجہ حاصل نہیں۔ ہر سال حقوق نسواں کے تحت جلوس، تقریروں اور تحریروں میں عورتوں کے ساتھ ہونے والی ناانصافیوں کو ختم کرنے کا عزم دہراتے ہیں، لیکن ہو سکتا ہے کہ آج ہی کے دن کوئی ناانصافی اور ظلم کا نشانہ بنے۔ ہمارے سامنے سوال یہ ہے کہ عورتوں کے لیے ایک دن مقرر کر لینے سے کیا معقول نتیجہ سامنے آ سکتا ہے؟ آج سے 1400 سال پہلے اسلام نے یہ تصور عام کیا کہ بحیثیت انسان مرد اور عورت برابر ہے اور عورت کے حقوق واضح طور پر پیش کیے۔ اسلام نے عورت کو عزت و مرتبہ بخشا، عورت رحمت قرار پائی۔ ماں کے قدموں میں جنت ہے تو بیٹی کی پرورش جنت میں پہنچنے کا ذریعہ۔ لمحہ فکر تو یہ ہے کہ خواتین کے ساتھ ناروا سلوک، ماں، بیٹی، بہن اور بیوی کی تکریم و عظمت کا حقدار تو اللہ نے بنایا، لیکن فرسودہ روایت اور رسوم کی پابندی نے عورت کو مجبور اور بے بس کر دیا۔ پروین شاکر 21ویں صدی کی شاعرہ خدا سے گلہ کرتی ہے کہ اے خدا، میری آواز سے ساحری چھن کر تو نے سانپوں کی بستی میں کیوں مجھ کو پیدا کیا؟ یا رفیہ شبنم عابدی کہتی ہیں، میرے وجود کو ہونے کا کچھ گما تو دے، ہنر دیا ہے تو پہچان دے، نشان تو دے۔ 21ویں صدی ٹیکنالوجی کے عروج کی صدی ہے۔ عورت دور جدید میں اپنی صلاحیتوں کا لوہا منوا رہی ہے، ہر شعبے میں اپنی کارکردگی کا ثبوت دے رہی ہے۔ مرد ہو یا عورت، سماج کی ترقی کے لیے دونوں کی تعلیم و ترقی ضروری ہے۔ ہمارا دین مکمل نظام حیات ہے جو مرد کو عورت کا محافظ قرار دیتا ہے۔ میں اپنی بات اقبال کے ان اشعار پر ختم کرتی ہوں۔ نئے پردہ نہ تعلیم نئی ہو کہ پرانی، نسوانیت زن کا نگہبان ہے فقط مرد۔ جس قوم نے اس زندہ حقیقت کو نہ سمجھا، جس قوم نے اس زندہ حقیقت کو نہ پایا، اس قوم کا خورشید بہت جلد ہوا زرد۔ اب میں محترم عارف پٹھان صاحب سے خطبہ استقبالیہ کے لیے مدعو کرتی ہوں۔
Good morning. First of all, I welcome our today's chief guest, Dr. Mehrunnisa Madam, teaching staff and students. I wish a happy Women's Day to all. As you know that 50% of our world population is women's. So we cannot progress without the progress of women's. Giving equal opportunities and due respect needed in the society. Keeping in this mind, our founder president, Dr. Rafiq Zakaria and Padam Shri Fatima Rafiq Zakaria, Madam has started Aurangabad College for Women, now known as Dr. Rafiq Zakaria College for Women, for upliftment of educational and all-round development of women's. Now, the world is celebrating Women's Day. The efforts of Dr. Rafiq Zakaria and similar persons has made women's empowered, and as a result the women's are moving with the pace of men in different aspects of life, different fields of life, and in every field we are looking the participation of women's. Now it is the responsibility of the society, especially men, to provide good atmosphere for the participation of women in different activities. So I I on behalf of the institute wish you a happy Women's Day, and assure that our institute will work for the benefits of women's and uplift their educational and skill levels to the higher level. Thank you.
शुक्रिया सर। अब मैं डॉक्टर अफरोज बेगम से गुजारिश करती हूँ कि वो अपने चीफ गेस्ट का तारुफ पेश करें।
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning and Assalamu alaikum, present here one and all. I am Dr. Afroz Begum, NSS officer, Dr. Rafiq Zakaria Center for Higher Learning and Advanced Research, and assistant professor in the Department of Sociology. I welcome you all for this one-day webinar on women's issues. It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce my friend, Dr. Mehrunisa Pathan, ma'am. Dr. Mehrunisa Pathan is presently working as Professor, Department of English, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad, Maharashtra. She has more than 17 years of teaching and research experience. She has published near about 38 papers in national and international journals. She has participated in near about 105 national and international conferences, seminars, workshops, symposiums, and presented research papers. She is appointed as an external examiner by various universities. As a resource person, she has delivered lectures at refresher, orientations, short-term courses, and pre-PhD coursework. She has designed various courses for post-graduation and MPhil courses. She is working on various national and international journals as an editorial board member and member of review. She has coordinated various activities for postgraduate, MPhil, and PhD students. She was the coordinator for the micro scholarship language access program organized by USA. She has completed minor and research projects sponsored by UGC and ICSSR New Delhi. Currently, she has completed sponsored research project on digital feminism, a study in Sanskrit, English, and Urdu literature, and has coined a new term as Indian digital feminism. 18 students are awarded MPhil degree and 4 students with a PhD under her supervision. Her area of interest are post theory, discourses, studies, and so on. She has completed her research work under the supervision of A.G. Khan sir, entitled Resistance Discourses, a study in the fiction of Farida Korodia Meher, Prastonji, and Kaveri Nambisan. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rananal. And I request to Mehrunisa Pathan ma'am to deliver her scholarly lecture. Welcome, ma'am.
Am I audible? Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, walaikum assalam. Is the screen visible?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. A very good morning to one and all. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam.
The director and convener of this one-day national webinar, Dr. Arif Pathan sir, the organizing secretary, Dr. Afroz Begum, the joint organizing secretary, Dr. Fayaz Farooqi, members of the organizing committee, Dr. Shazia Mirza, Dr. Imran Pathan, Mrs. Shahista Parveen, Mrs. Zeba Nas, faculty members from various institutes, participants, and dear student friends. It's an honor and privilege to be invited as a resource person at Dr. Rafiq Zakaria Center for Higher Learning and Advanced Research and the NSS unit, Razabad, Aurangabad, for this one-day national webinar organized on the occasion of International Women's Day. The topic that I am supposed to speak on is women empowerment in 21st century, a critical perspective. In order to understand, let me share the presentation. What we mean by power, meaning of empower, and then we will move on to the meaning of empowerment. So we move on to the meaning of power. What is the meaning of power as it is defined by Oxford English Dictionary? So it is the ability or capacity to do something or act in a particular way. The second definition is the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. The word power is derived from Latin word which is called as potere, which means to be able. Power also means mighty, indomitable, strong, omnipotent, influential, dominant, dynamical, Herculean, ruling, and so on. And now when we move on to the opposites of power, it's powerless, strong, weak, subject, object, dominant, oppressed. Here, these opposites, if you use in post-colonial context, it would be center and margin, like powerful, powerless, beautiful, ugly, center, periphery, or marginalized. In this, we can see women as oppressed sections of society. They are at margin. They have been objectified. If man is the subject, so women are the objects. They are treated as commodity. They are treated as objects of commodification due to the patriarchal society. The society is man-dominated society. Now, moving on to the meaning of empowerment. What does it mean to empower? What is the meaning of empowerment? Now, to empower means to accept the viewpoints or making an effort to seek them, raising the status of women through education, through awareness, through literacy and training, improvement of women's social, political status and economic status. It also leads to a growing intrinsic capability, greater self-confidence, and an inner transformation of one's consciousness that enables one to overcome external barrier, whatsoever may be the external barriers. To empower means it is a power to achieve desired goals, but not a power over others. It is not subjugation of others, not power over others. So the idea of empowerment is more applicable to those who are powerless, whether they are male or they are female, or a group of individuals, or a class or caste. So the concept of empowerment is not specific to women, yet it is unique in that it cut across all types of class, caste, and also within families and households. That's how Malhotra and others, they have looked at the meaning or definition of empowerment that was mentioned in 2002. It is also defined as a change in the context of women's life, which enables her increased capacity, leading a fulfilling human life. It gets reflected both in external qualities, like when we mention about the health, mobility, education and awareness, status in the family, participation in decision-making, and also at the level of material security, internal qualities of self-awareness and self-confidence as defined by Human Development in South Asia 2000. That was again quoted by Matthew in 2003. Now, when we talk about United Nations Development Plan, that is UNDP 1990, for the first time, they introduced the concept of Human Development Index. This Human Development Index is abbreviated as HDI, that evolved initially as a border measure of socio-economic progress of a nation, but it became popular as a measure of average achievements in human development for both the sexes. Contrary to the general belief that development is gender neutral, it is gender neutral when we talk about progress development. Statistics show that women lag behind. This is very important. The statistic shows that women lag behind men all over the world, including India, in almost all aspects of life. It is for this reason that the focus on human development has been to highlight the gender dimension containing inequalities confronting women since 1995. That's how UNDP has mentioned. So the report noted that without empowering women, overall development of human beings is not possible. If we want to have the development of human beings as a whole, so it cannot be done without empowering the women. That's the major half of minority. To bring out the facts and figures relating to the deprivation of women, two indices, namely Gender-Related Development Index, that is known as GDI, and Gender Empowerment Measure, that is GEM, they were being introduced. So the GDI measures the achievements in the same dimensions and variables as the HDI. It also takes into account inequality in achievement between men and women. That's how Anand and Sen, they have mentioned in 1995. So the greater gender disparity in human development, the lower is country's GDI compared to its HDI. So the GDI is the HDI adjusted downwards for gender inequality. So the GEM indicates whether women are able to actively participate in economic and political life. Now, moving on to the theories that are based on women empowerment. People may feel helpless in their lives for any number of reasons, but empowerment theory focus on how oppression contributes to this experience. It centers on helping marginalized people at individual, group, and community levels gain the personal, interpersonal, and political power to improve their lives. It's Herlios A. Humes and Nina Hansen, Sabine Otten, and Robert Lansing. They have developed a three-dimensional model of women's empowerment, which is based on the microfinance and future direction. Now, I'm not going to get into details, but how it has been mentioned in futuristic term. So here, I would look at now what is this CDA model? Three different levels, like we have the micro, meso, and macro level. So at the micro level, referring to an individual's personal beliefs as well as actions where personal empowerment can be observed. Meso level is the level referring to the beliefs as well as actions in relation to relevant others where relational empowerment can be observed. And the third level, that is macro level, referring to outcomes in the broader societal context where societal empowerment can be observed. Even time and culture also plays a very important role in this. We do remember that once upon a time, matriarchy was practiced in India. Now, moving on to the history, when we talk about the history, so throughout history and across nations, still today, men on average have greater access to power. Brown 1991 United Nations Development Program, the gender, this is Petro and Volcker in 2004, what they have mentioned, the gender power suggests that power is gendered. Even the power is gendered. So gender-based inequalities can be observed in several aspects of daily life, such as access to job opportunities, education, and economic resources. Again, UNDP has mentioned in 2015. The UNESCO in 2014, that was again, that was in a report that was been taken up in 2011, mentioned that only 20% of low-income nations had achieved gender parity in primary education, whereas 66% of world's 774 million illiterate adults were still women. So gender equity is an important goal to be achieved. So moving on to the other slide, I am mentioning two poems. One is The Carnage of Liberty and Cage of Freedom. So let me move on to this poem. It's visible on your screen. The poem goes on in this way. When you are given liberty, you should enjoy it and not exploit it. My whole life I was lied. No one taught me how to fight. My cute little doll you call me. Like a puppet master you control me. What you know about freedom? We can't even breathe free. Which clothes to wear was up to us. Then why do the aunties make such a fuss? Not allowed to talk to the male, was it such a shame? Didn't you trust me? Why couldn't you let me free? Stop talking about the fraternity. Your promises are all empty. We never get liberty. This is the harsh reality. We don't have school life. We just don't want to be someone's wife. We don't want to give birth to 5. We don't get the liberty to life. Asking about our choice was a formality. God will punish you for this brutality, just burdened on by others' beliefs, as if they were living my life. Bad liar you were, lied about you loved me. It hurts like 1,000 ants stinging me at once. The suffering is brutal on all fronts. Beti bachao, beti padhao rants in the country. Thinking about the cost of dowry, was my birth a boon? Was it gonna cost you a fortune? Without wings, I can fly to the moon. Money will fall like rain in the monsoon. My potential will blast off like a rocket. Just set me free and see the carnage of this ideology. There is another poem. This is written by a male poet. The Cage of Freedom. Now, this poem, it goes in this way. The land we live on, it speaks about the freedom, yes, is freed for 75 years. The freedom we had is gone. Did it ever occur to our ears? The lives we had lost, who had to pay the cost? What about the women? Were they less than men? Independence is what we got. Fearless they fought. We got dependent. Was it known? Couldn't even clear the loans. Who's suffering the most? Women are the ones. What about the freedom lost? Questions raised more than a ton. Restricted on the clothes to wear. Right to choose, to give in vain. They call it freedom. Is it fair? It gives nothing but only pain. This obnoxious feeling caught up in the cage of freedom. The night walk is still in waiting. What is happening to this kingdom? Taking life decisions is not for all. Can't even think of stepping out. Sooner or later, this devil is gonna fall. To the world we shout. Can't choose whom to marry. Always told to be quiet, my ambitions all blurry. It's time to fight. A housewife gives it all. To her soulmate she bored. In hands of the rapist she falls. Not even contraceptives allowed. Thinking that can change the world. Too modern you are, they say. All of her emotions she folds. Why was she to pay? It's us who needs hammering, our minds wrapped up with poison, poor thoughts and ideals disgusting. Is treating girls this way a fair decision? the women are the soul of the nation. This is very important. The women are the soul of the nation. The wings of truth unfold to make this world heaven. That's how the truths are told. Now, moving on to the other presentation of mine, I would be talking about the first wave of feminism, because I would be relating it to the present context, because we're talking about the women empowerment. So how they fought. It was late 19th and early 20th century that women, they got voting rights, because they came out in the form of suffrage movements, and they started to fight for their political rights, right to vote. So the emergence of the first wave feminist suffrage, they came out for the necessity for the second sex to gain property and voting rights in order to claim for themselves autonomy and liberty. They tended to be the most of the women in spaces that usually prized female submission and disparaged vocal disobedience. Many of them, they were poets, thinkers, politicians, even activists, educators, while others were in more precarious positions who were forced to necessarily fight for their rights in order to simply live their lives. They did not indeed identify as of the first wave or even as feminists, but because of their valiant efforts to dismantle the literal patriarchy of the time. So equity between the sexes slowly but surely began to transcribe. Of course, the term, the first wave feminist, erases pre-existing feminism such as Native women's struggle with racism and sexism after colonial contact, or Black women's involvement with ending slavery and segregation. But the wave conception of feminism possessed an incremental amassed built up in feminism. Now, moving on to, again, it's continued with the suffrage movements, what they did and how they fought for their rights. Now, moving on to the second wave of the feminism, it was the extension of the first collectivized movement to action, which was showed up by the institutionalization of feminism within academia to counter rampant sexism and discrimination in academics they have faced. It was further augmented by the innumerable activists who latched onto feminism as a political form of academic and theoretical venue for critique. It led to an increased awareness of the criticism against a number of women's issues, though as the third wave particularly has been critical of, far from all of them. So it explored the unequal and inequitable distribution of labor on the basis of sex and gender, the pitfalls of American consumerism, the middle class ideals for middle class women, the unethical treatment of sex workers, though many inadvertently only further polemicized the issue. So it initiated an entire conversation on feminism and women's issues, albeit imperfectly and often paternalistically. Moving ahead with the third wave of feminism. So it aroused in part to criticize these tendencies in feminism and served more importantly to discuss previously marginalized concerns. Instead of listing the complex array of pressing matters pertinent, these critics, which would inevitably prioritized certain issues over others. So the key concern is that these criticisms opened the debate of feminists to new concerns. So feminism has become adopted by a more diverse audience and activist sphere. This diversity has become more nuanced and cogent, moreover, as a result. So examining the intersections of identity has proven crucial for the success of feminist education, since it fosters a community while still being attuned to difference and the tensions therein. So we move on to the fourth wave of feminism. This is how the fourth wave, because there have been so many books that have been written, even the essays, whether feminism is dead as a discipline, but it is available in form of the fourth wave. Like you have the blog, for instance, Then you also have a fourth way, as it was been Jessica Valenti, who is the founder of feministing.com. However, it was in an interview taken in 2009, in 2009, which is entitled as Fourth Way Feminism. So with the New York Times, it was mentioned that how the digital media through online platforms, these women's issues, they are being addressed, and how they are being empowered through the digital media, digital platform that has been mentioned with the fourth wave of feminism. So this is something that I felt equally important to share when we talk about the empowerment of women in 21st century, that not only earlier with the first and second wave or the third wave of feminism, but with the fourth wave. And in the third wave, we have Julia Kristeva, where she mentions, I'm a victim and attacker. At the same time, she also mentions about the way in which men and women are not the opposites, but they are the they are the two sides of the same coin, and how there has to be equilibrium between the two sexes rather than getting into the opposites or what the radicals they have been talking about. Now, moving on to the representation, how we have representation through literature, through cinema, through different movements that have been taking place, migrant workers. We do have the issues of the tribals and the Adivasis, and how the hybrid identities they have been formulated, and how they have been representing themselves through writings. Let me come back to a small piece of a poem by Helen Sixes. The poem is entitled as Very Sheep. Activity, passivity, sun, moon, culture, nature, day, night, father, mother, head, heart, then intelligible, sensitive, logos and pathos, and there are ellipses. So ellipses, they are continued in the original one. So all these appositions, she argued, are constructed, they are structured on the underlying opposition of men and women. This opposition takes place in language, and as language forms a possibility to think, these relative positions of mastery and subordination, they are created. So they are equally inescapable in language and also in thought. This is the basic reason why they are immediately constituted. Women empowerment is a global discourse that has gained momentum in recent decades, as the development of society depends on the socio-political, cultural, economic well-being of humans, and also not only humans, but well-being of the women as such. As a global discourse, it ensures equal rights, develop confidence, a sense of self-dignity and respect. It also gives women an opportunity for education and equal employment, and opportunities without any gender bias. It should not be based on gender, but gender, it should be neutral, gender neutral. So the very first step in the development of women is to provide education, as it will develop confidence and also provide them with employment. Education enables women to make their own choices, build confidence, improve their own and their families' conditions. As it is mentioned in the Holy Quran, read in the name of thy Lord, who created all the human beings from one single soul, men and women. Read in this context refers to education, and again, education for all, men, women, and children. So for the development of any society, education is a must. Most of the Islamic countries follow very strictly the Islamic Sharia, or what is known as Islamic law. In the Islamic countries, there is no law for sex determination, as it rests with the parents whether they want to know the sex of the child. In Islamic countries, sex determination is not banned. Let me mention here, as going through this refresher course on gender sensitization, day before yesterday, we had a resource person, And in detail, it was been mentioned by the resource person that with a particular place, if there are 870 male boys, I mean to say male children are born, it's the ratio was 1,000 male boys and 870 females. Okay, so this is how the ratio is going on as it has been mentioned. So I'm referring again back to the point that I wanted to make, that in Islamic countries, sex discrimination is not banned as it is banned in India. Secondly, the Islamic Sharia guarantees all rights to women. There is no dowry system in Islam. The groom has to manage everything according to Islamic law and also pay the amount of meher, compulsory amount payable to the bride by the groom. The parents of the girl child has to only take care of her till she gets matured and educated. All the expenses of the marriage are to be borne by the groom and his family. So according to Islamic Sharia, women are not considered as a burden or a curse to the parents. In the pre-Islamic period, girl child was buried alive and was considered to be a curse or a shame for the family. So the Islamic Sharia is very strict about the law regarding rape. If found guilty, the person should be immediately punished and hanged. There is a complete surah, which is called as Surah Al-Nisa, meaning a woman. All rights are guaranteed to a woman and the girl child. Now, even in the 21st century, education is not universally available and gender inequalities persist. In the present times, several legislative acts have been passed to ensure women's empowerment. There are provisions made in the Constitution. Empowering strategies need substantial fine-tuning to ensure that they are effective and also result-oriented. So the vision for future should be built on gender perspective, and hence there is a need for comprehensive result-oriented policies for the empowerment of women. Women empowerment should therefore focus on economic and political empowerment, governance, self-help group, sustainable development, health and nutrition, leadership, decision-making, political leadership, agriculture sector, mass media, culture, and so on. So let us not forget the kind of brutality that was being done by those who killed Asefa, the Koparadi case, the Tadvi case, the Dr. Reddy case, the Nirbhaya case, and the list goes on. The other part of the argument is that whether educated or uneducated, whether rural or urban, whether employed or unemployed, whether financially independent or not, all these women have been the victims at the hands of brutality in the 21st century. So the basic question is why and how long it will continue. On the other side, we want Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and at the same time, we can see the brutality that is existing in the present society and the present era. What do we need to do? And are we serious about this? If we want to give justice to these women, then we should see that no rape case exists. In India, Beti is not safe. How can we guarantee the protection and the security of those to whom we guarantee citizenship rights? Women have been target of torture by the so-called man-dominated society. Women don't enjoy the freedom in its true sense. Man has always dominated women. Women have been exploited in every walk of life, one way or the other. The womanhood in India is role-based, which has been represented by the society as a mother, a daughter, a wife, and a sister. If we talk about the world's women in general and the condition of Indian women in particular, we can conclude that the condition of Indian women is worst as human beings. Though India won official freedom in 1947, can we believe that Indian women are liberated? And that's why I refer to those two poems that represented the image of the women in its true sense. So it is a debatable question for us. The then prevailing conditions of women were worst and it continues. If we talk about a country like India, we will have to differentiate between the women who belong to the urban and the rural areas. We can't speak about women's liberation in vacuum. From a religious point of view, again, it is a debatable question about the masculine and the feminine, gender by which God and goddesses are represented. The debatable question here is why God is called as he and why not she? Who said God is he and not she? This has been questioned by a feminist critic. So according to consolidated regional workshops, it is a report which has been long back referred by, edited by Lingam and Fadke, which has been entitled as Globalization, Women's Identity and Violence. And this was being conducted from 17 to 20th October 2002, along with 8 collaborating institutions. So this is what is being mentioned. I'm quoting from that. Globalization affects women at different levels. At one end of the social spectrum, women are affected by consumerism, and at the other end, deprived of necessities. It was argued that globalization also seeks to generate a new set of norms and values for women. These issues now take us to the realm of cultural politics under globalization. The political discourse of culture under globalization has articulated itself through 2 related discourses, one of Western culture, bashing, and the other discourse of Indian culture that exhibits anxiety over the supposed hegemony of Western culture. Both these discourses are anti-feminist and antithetical to the progressive women's movement, unquote. So the present condition of women is that she has become a puppet and commodity in the hands of the so-called men-dominated society. Women are being exploited through advertisements, through cinemas, TV serials. Now you also have the Netflix and so on. So media also plays an important role in developing such exploitations, and man is the consumer of this commodity. In India, previously it was that every 35 minutes a woman was raped, and now in the present era, it's 25 minutes, especially in the cosmopolitan cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, and so on. Who is responsible for this? And how can we overcome these problems? In what way women can protest and protect themselves? These are various problems and issues, challenges that are being put forth, that are prevailing in a country like India. If these problems are solved, then with confidence, one can say that the status of women in India has improved and women are liberated in terms of betterment, leading towards all walks of life, whether social, cultural, psychological, and so on and so forth. Apart from these problems, there are various problems related to their human needs, like bread and butter. Problems of working women are different from that of household, or new term that has been used for them, house managers. All these factors are to be kept in mind when we are talking about women's liberation or women empowerment. Society is generally sensitized to injustice that is perpetrated on the women over the centuries. The problems of women reared in traditional setup and ethos remain even when they take up employment. Still, they are deprived of economic independence, self-decision, and so on. That ought to be their right. One of the beautiful article that has been referred in one of the Marathi newspaper, it was related to kitchen. Previously, the way in which the kitchens were being structured, now the way in which the kitchens are being structured in as an attachment to the drawing halls. So a beautiful article that has been referred. So the society's expectation from working women at the domestic front remain the same as those from non-working women. So strict and well-defined is the socialization of boys and girls into stereotypes, patriarchal sex roles, that boys feel that the girls automatically own up the domestic chores as they grow up, while the boys feel that they are made for the outside spheres. As Simone de Beauvoir in The Second Sex, she rightly mentions or argued that women are not born, but they are made, and the queens are not male or females, but rather they are sovereign. Sovereign, the ultimate power, the highest, the ultimate owners of the power. So the life of woman is divided into three parts. Female, that is a biological difference, which is represented by the distribution of sweets on the birth of a male and distribution of a jalebi on the birth of a female child. The difference in the toys that is given to the girl child to play. Another part of women's life is represented by the feminine qualities of her life. Being a girl child, she is restricted from freedom. Differences are made in the diet of a male and a female child. Let me mention here, when we have been doing this project on digital feminism, Fayyaz Farooqi was also along with us as a research investigator. We have visited different schools and different institutions, because we had collaborations with 22 institutions all over India. So one of the girl child, she mentioned, she wanted to do a course in archaeology. She wanted to become an archaeologist, and she said her parents resisted. Another, there were so many, issues that were coming up. One of the challenges and issues was also related to the families, that how families treated the males and the females, boy and girl, I mean to say. So all the males in a family, they would eat first. This has been the practice. And the females, they would eat after the male, they finish their eating. Then there are certain limits which she can't cross. The dignity of a girl lies in her marriage, and marriage is a social institution which is meant for procreation and well-being of an individual, to avoid vulgarity, sexual encounters, and to give father's name to the children who are born. So a woman passes through these three stages of her life. First, as a maiden, a young unmarried girl. Second, as a wife, a young restricted girl with all responsibility. And a third, as a crone, that is an old woman with negative attitude. Let me also mention here about a movie. The name of that movie is When I Became a Woman. So this movie depicts three characters, what I am right now mentioning about the three different ways in which a life or the phases of a woman's life is. So therefore, even when the women in the house has a job outside the house too, her first responsibility is considered to be towards her family, while there is no concession for her in the office work for she being a woman or her being a woman. According to Sinha, this is 2000, what has been mentioned. The cultures which put a maximum premium on the males, the political environment of instability, criminalization, and absence of political ideology are the factors that influence the extent of political participation. Socio-political environment determines the participation and involvement of women in politics. This is a quote that I borrowed from Sinha. So coming back to the point, the exploitation of women in terms of more work and fewer wages should come to an end. The eve teasers should be adequately punished, and the molestation and rape of girls should be dealt strictly. Ensuring the security of the girls and the women during the working hours should be the responsibility of the employers, and they should listen sympathetically to the genuine complaints of women. And that's why we also have the women's cell everywhere. They have been established, and even the sexual harassment cell, which are been established at the workplace. Now, law must provide equality to women in practice, not in abstraction, and special cells for the redressal of women's grievances must be set up and should be made functional. Legislation and social reforms should and they can provide strength to women to fight against all types of evils and discriminations. To awaken women to their rights, their powers and potential is the foremost need of the hour, because injustice against them will continue as long as they are made to believe in the definitions that are being given by the males. Women have to be awakened to the fact that their inferiority is not ordained in heaven, and that they are capable of falsifying the male definitions given to them. Women must form solid groups to fight their common problems. It is heartening that some such groups have come up and their number is increasing, but much remains to be done to activate these groups as well as to give them wide publicity. If earlier those who occupied the bottom of society were invisible to the cognitive blackout perpetrated by upper caste, middle class, urban male researcher, today they are in full view and demand their legitimate share of representation in the production and representation of knowledge. Let me mention here, one of the researchers is working on a very significant topic related to the representation of minority literature, that overall in India, how many universities they have implemented the course on minority literature, and what is the share or representation of the women in that particular course. That's how it has been carried out now. So all societies have their bottoms. Thus the bottoms of society that are homogeneous and merely they're stratified are occupied by women youth. So the knowledge produced by these categories, their counterparts, men, adults over some time have questioned the specific role of each of these disadvantaged categories in the production of knowledge and has come to be recognized. So we have P.N. Mary Bhatt, in the Economic and Political Weekly. It's based on the search for clues on the trial of missing Indian females. We also have a movie on that, where you have, I don't exactly remember the name of that movie, but Rani Mukherjee is the main character in that, based on the missing Indian females, yeah, how that has been projected. So I'm a movie, Mardani. Yeah, Mardani is that particular movie that speaks about it. Now, moving on back to the point that I was making. So Mary Bhatt has, P.N. Mary Bhatt has asked these debatable questions in it. Why the proportion of females in the population was falling during the last century when one expected it to rise with improvements in health and life expectancy? It cannot be answered merely by observing that female in India have lower autonomy and face a higher risk of mortality than males. Again, it was a recent review points out that it is not adequately recognized in the literature that the puzzle is about the dynamics of the sex ratio, not just about its low equilibrium value. This calls for an explanation in terms of the dynamics of the underlying determinants, such as widening sex differentiates in mortality, intensification of sex discrimination, or manifestation of sex biases in new forms. So still, there are sex biases that have been existing in new forms. Women should be given equal opportunity to work and not for begging. Human rights should be given to women empowerment, and the entire social family structure is so designed in patriarchal framework as to put women in a subordinate position, differing them from decision-making in all vital areas that affect their lives, even their control over their bodies, their well-being and their well-being of those whom they love and hold dear to them. There is another Justice Manohar Sujata in Empowering the Indian Women, that was been again edited by Promila Kapoor, published long back by the Government of India. It was in 2001. I'm taking that particular quote from it. It says, recent survey estimate that as many as 4 million women are victims of domestic violence. 4 million women. They are victims of domestic violence each year, and 3/4 of all women will suffer some violent incidents in their lifetime. Brutality by a spouse or partner is the single major cause of injury to women. It cut across lines of ethnicity, caste, or sexual orientation, unquote. So this is what they have mentioned. In Lokmat Times, a newspaper published in Aurangabad, dated 10th February 2020, it was mentioned with the broad title that women in rural areas face domestic violence daily. There is also a research that has been carried out, like in the COVID period, in the lockdown period, how women were more victim of this domestic violence. So it was a survey report on an international organization named Swiss Aid that revealed these shocking statistics. It was from past 7 years that organization started to research on women in Marathwada about domestic violence. In 2019, the organization, along with the Hello Medical Foundation, that is Mano Lok Ligam and Women Development Mission, they visited Beed, Usmanabad, Latur, and Hingoli and performed research on 2,400 women between the age group of 18 to 49 across 50 villages. And these were the findings of that particular research. Nearly 38.3% of women face domestic violence, and 42 men and 52% women do not have any problem with men hitting women. Like you also see a movie like Thappad, where she rebels, protests, resists, and the message that has been given that even one thappad is not allowed. Yes. So again, we have around 50% of women. These were the statistics that I'm mentioning from the research. Around 50% of women were married before completing 18 years. That is also mentioned by UNESCO also, that at a very early age of their life, they have been married. Surprisingly, 80% women provides financial support to the family, and every 4 out of 10 women are part of self-help group. This is what they have mentioned. Illiteracy belonging to financially weaker section. The illicit relationship of men is some of the cause of domestic violence. Only 18% of women raise concerns over physical abuse. Only 10% of women are aware of the law regarding physical violence. Only 15% of women are aware of counseling centers. This is mentioned in the Lokmat Times. I have referred to that. Now, moving back to the point, why we need to empower. By empowering women economically and socially, these movements provide a bridge between institutions of the state, and people lacked access to political power or a political voice. Since independence, national development has been premised on an understanding of development primarily in terms of economic growth. India has nonetheless failed to achieve growth with justice. Many middle-class families today expect of their unmarried daughters that they work and support the family. But for many educated Indian girls, working are at the same time a means to acquire an independent social status. If she is married, then her extra familiar roles coming to conflict with the familial roles. However, women have already finished their college and education, for they are looking for employment, show more realistic attitude towards women's education, for they see education already about other expectations of society. They know that education can be both functional and dysfunctional for a woman in the present Indian society. It's not about simply mainstreaming women. It's not about women going to the polluted stream, but it is about the dignity and self-respect of every woman. It is difficult to be strong and at the same time be soft. We need to clean the system, change our mindsets. Then only it will be possible for us to empower every woman. When the interest and voices of half of humanity are not reflected in decision-making processes, how can we achieve liberty, equality, freedom in the given society? Once the woman is free in its true sense of the term, then only the very wider social issues of poverty, eradication, employment, health, hygiene, they can be achieved. Much has been discussed in the wake of women, but still much needs to be done in the real sense to achieve women empowerment. So we do have women empowerment, how they are being represented through literature, through cinema, as I mentioned, movies like Thappad and others, also through literature, like we have Malala Yousafzai, a biography that has been written like I Am Malala. Malala Yousafzai's that particular text. Or we also have Anna Burns' Milkman, or we have Origin of Love, and so on and so forth. Origin of Love is based on surrogacy. Then the issues of the surrogate mothers, the families that are adopting, and so on and so forth. So various issues based on women. And there are various acts that are being based on women empowerment. And moving on to, like, when we talk about the what are the requirements, how do we empower women? Through awareness about their rights, especially their constitutional rights, health and hygiene. Like, you know, there were some of the online apps, WhatsApps that were being used in a very wrong way, where there was a selling and buying of the images of the Muslim women. So right to represent in every sphere and every activity of life, and they should be aware of their rights, yes. But one should not forget, I being a woman, yes, I cannot say this, and I should be very proud to mention that every successful woman stands because either of her brother, father, son, or a husband. So a woman is definitely backboned by the father, by the son, by the husband, and by the brother. So as Julia Kristeva says, as I have mentioned already, that men and women are the two sides of the same coin. So they have to have an equilibrium between them. So let me end by saying this. खोल दो पंख मेरे, अभी और उड़ना बाकी है, जमीन नहीं है मंजिल मेरी, अभी तो पूरा आसमान बाकी है, लहरों की खामोशी को समंदर की बेबसी न समझो, जितनी गहराई अंदर है बाहर उतना तूफान बाकी है. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to deliver a lecture on women empowerment, and I have tried to do a bit justice by referring to what I have mentioned earlier in my lecture related to women empowerment. You know, the way in which the hijab issue is going on right now. Earlier it was in Karnataka, the lady who was imprisoned, and her daughter, she was only one girl child, and the way in which the whole debate and discourse went on. In this way, that we need to understand the empowerment of women, and women can be empowered only if they are being backboned by the way in which I have mentioned, by these familiar roles. Again, one important quote is there, and I think that I will stop. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and let me end by this. Zamir zinda rak, Kabir zinda rak, सुल्तान भी बन जाए तू दिल में तीर जिंदा रख, हौसला प्रकाश में कोशिश का वो तीर जिंदा रख, हर हार जा चाहे जिंदगी में सब कुछ, मगर फिर से जीतने की उम्मीद जिंदा रख. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I am really very thankful to all the organizers for giving this wonderful opportunity to interact. Tomorrow we are going to have at Tarabai Shinde Women's Study Center. Let me also put it on record that important things that I would like to share. The first one is Tarabai Shinde Women's Study Center has got a research center now. So it is Tarabai Shinde Women's Studies and Advanced Research Center. And secondly, tomorrow on 8th of March on International Women's Day, we are organizing one-day national seminar on emancipation of women, issues and challenges. So do participate in that. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you one and all.
बहुत शुक्रिया मैम, आपके इस तफसीली और वसी लेक्चर ने औरत के दरपेश मसाइल, उन मसाइल पर उठाई गई आवाज और हुकूक निस्वा की अहमियत को बखूबी वाज़े किया। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। अब मैं मोहतरम फयाज फारूकी सर से गुजारिश करती हूँ कि वो अपने तासुरात पेश करें।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया मैम। पहले तो मैं प्रोफेसर मेहरुन्निसा पठान मैम को मुबारकबाद देता हूँ। उन्होंने जिस मौजू को चुना उस पर शायद ही यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर ने इस कदर गहराई और गहराई में जाकर तहकीक की होगी। मुझे याद है कि जिस वक्त आपने इंडियन डिजिटल फेमिनिज्म के तहत तहकीक का कंसेप्ट लाया था, ये अपने आप में बिल्कुल नया कंसेप्ट था। इससे पहले फेमिनिज्म पर बात हो चुकी थी, दीगर तहकीक भी सामने आ चुकी थी, लेकिन 21वीं सदी में और जदीद दौर के तनाजुर में ख़वातीन का डिजिटलाइजेशन में क्या किरदार रहा है, इसको आपने जिस अरखरेजी से और जिस मेहनत से, नहीं तो फिर मैं कट कर देता हूँ ना, मुझे तासुरात के लिए क्यों कहा था? डिस्टर्ब नहीं करना है। सॉरी टू डिस्टर्ब यू मैम। तो मैं आपको बेहद मुबारकबाद। मेरी आवाज सुनाई दे रही है? सेंटर के डायरेक्टर प्रोफेसर आरिफ खान साहब का मैं ममनून मशकूर भी हूँ इस वजह से भी कि वो सेंटर की एक्टिविटीज़ और खुसूसन ख़वातीन के ताल्लुक़ से बेहद मुतफक्किर भी रहते हैं और वो उनको गाहे बगाहे उनके लिए प्लेटफॉर्म भी मुहैया करते हैं। और इसी तरह मैं आज के इस प्रोग्राम की कन्वीनर अफरोज मैम को भी मुबारकबाद देता हूँ और तमाम को भी मुबारकबाद देता हूँ। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
हाँ, बहुत शुक्रिया सर। अब मैं मिसेस शाइस्ता परवीन से गुजारिश करती हूँ कि वो शुक्रिया की रस्म अदा करें।
A graceful good afternoon to our most valued resource person, worthy staff members, organizing committee members, and all the participants. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on the occasion of one-day national webinar on International Women's Day under the topic Women Empowerment in 21st Century, a Critical Perspective. On behalf of organizing committee, I, Shaista Parveen, Assistant Professor, Department of Mathematics, Dr. Rafiq Zakaria Center for Higher Learning and Advanced Research, first of all, extend my most sincere thanks to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for making this event successful. I extend my deep gratitude to today's resource person, Professor Mehrunisa Pathan Ma'am, Department of English and Director of Tarabai Shinde Women's Study Center, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad, for accepting our invitation and taking out time from her busy schedule to grace the event. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for sharing thoughts on women empowerment and enlighten women's struggle from periods of time, inspiring and encouraging us with your words on this special day. A special thanks to Dr. Arif Pathan sir, convener of the event and in charge director of Dr. Rafiq Zakaria Center for Higher Learning and Advanced Research, for providing immense support to make this event or national seminar a great success. Further, a big thanks to the Dr. Afroz Ma'am, Program Officer, NSS Unit, Organizing Secretary, and Head, Department of Sociology, Dr. Fayaz Farooqi Sir, Joint Organizing Secretary and Head, Department of Urdu, and Organizing Committee members for their efforts to organize this webinar and has made this webinar a success through their cooperation and dedication. I'd also like to thanks to all those participants for their active participation. Further, I especially thank the people who have been backbone of the event, that is our technical arrangement team, for their excellent work to make this event happen. Once again, I thanks to all. Have a wonderful day ahead.